Okay, hello. I'd like to talk a little bit about the sections of either the work-based learning research proposal or the dissertation reports that need to be done. When you're doing the projects, I do recommend that you work with a study partner. This way you're able to check each other's work and help each other in terms of proofreading. A good exercise to do is to give yourself 1 minute to think about things that you've learned since the last week in doing your project, and then reviewing that with your study partner. Current events are a useful part of doing your project. You can add this as part of your references. It doesn't only have to be literature. These are the section headings that I'll review for you today so that you can make sure that your report is complete. Notice that these section headings are different than the chapter headings for the dissertations. Okay, the title is very important, but it can be changed as you're going along. You want to make sure you have the key words for your title. That would be something that would help you to find your research if you were using, say, a search engine. Make sure that as you are putting your report together that you are thinking about who the audience is. That's important to make sure that you're using the right vocabulary. Now, the introduction is the start of your proposal, and this may include an abstract or executive summary. You have to check your section headings for that. It may also want to include a tag cloud, so you can have a look at that. Within there, you should see your background information, as well as your mission statement, or vision statement, or value statement of the company, if that's appropriate for your project. The proposal statement itself may take a hard science, experimental, or quantitative model approach, where you have a hypothesis, where you're looking at a specific research question that you're testing, where the researcher is seen to be as an outside participant of the investigation. Or they can take a more soft or social science approach, often used with qualitative data, where you're having a starting proposition, or maybe you're basing this on your professional experience or an academic model. You're trying to predict the trends and innovations that may be part of your investigation. And you're looking at the entire project more from an insider or insider researcher perspective. Be aware that in this kind of context, you want to be aware of the political issues that may be involved. So the research approach is important. We don't want to simply say you're going to do a survey. That's a tool or a research technique that's sitting inside a larger methodology. We want to be able to get the evidence to validate your conclusions and recommendations. So we need to have an overall research method, both in the proposal for projects as well as the project themselves. This is an important chapter, an important section. Here you can see Wikipedia has a long list of different research approaches that you may want to explore. We're recommending some here, such as the case study, the action inquiry, grounded theory, ethnographic approach, critical incident technique, or soft systems methodologies are some that may be appropriate for your particular work. Please have a look through these links or do a search yourself for any of these approaches. they're quite useful and important to identify for your research project design. Now, we want to make sure that you can justify your approach. So when you are doing your approach, you would like to probably state at least one other approach that you read about and rejected, and then give the reason why it wasn't appropriate. Or it might be a situation that you want to do a kind of blend or mixed approach. In this case, that would mean that you would be doing, say, the rich pictures from soft systems methodology that were set up for the observations in a case study. In the project proposal as well as the project report, ethics are important. Make sure that you have your GSM ethics checklist and forms, especially if you're doing any type of surveys or questionnaires or interviews. You want to make sure that the people that you're involving give their permission. And you may want to also provide evidence of why you've done things in a certain ethical approach. For example, keeping things anonymous. And BERA is a good place to reference for that. For the project proposal, we want to consider what resources are going to be involved. Could be physical resources or human resources. Writing up the project report. This is not a chapter section heading, but something that you may want to be discussing as part of your write-up. Now, the schedule is something that is quite important for the students that are doing their projects. You should be having a timeline. You know when your hand-in is. You'll have 10 weeks to get it finished. And so you have the different section headings for the project report. So therefore, you want to be trying to get chapter or a section heading finished on a weekly basis. This is very useful in terms of getting feedback if you're going in the right direction. So please make sure you send some draft chapters to your project supervisors. If you're doing a project proposal for work-based learning, this schedule is important to be able to show that for the project itself, you've considered how your timeline will work out. And there's a number of tools online for free that you can use. So in the project proposal, we should be identifying any threat that may be occurring in the project. For the project report itself, it may be that you are not identifying the threat, but as you are doing the project, you've identified that there was a problem and how you overcame that problem. So the example would be that for this situation, not enough surveys were returned. You were expecting 100 responses, but you only received 30. So you needed to have some type of backup plan. In this case, instead of doing the electronic survey as you originally were hoping to do, you actually hand out some paper surveys in order to get a higher return percentage for your sample group, and then physically add that into the online survey tool. So this is important, justifying your approaches in case there are any threats to your project. Budget is something that you need to be aware of. If you are doing a project within GSM, there is no funding allocation. Sorry, no money available. A project proposal, you may want to consider in work-based learning some of these different elements, because it's possible that your project may be eligible to put forward for some research funding grant. and possibly putting it in for publication, for a conference, or a national recognition award. And if you factor those things in, you can put the budget requests in for those types of things for project proposals. This is not necessary for the level 5 or level 6 projects. Now, what we want to do is we want to consider the measurement of success for the project. How will we know if it's successful? A big misconception is that your project is successful if you've proven your hypothesis, and it's a failure if your hypothesis was not true. That is not correct. You would want to make sure that you have your conclusions linked to your chapters. At the end of each section, it's good to have a summary. Those summaries tie together to inform your conclusions, and your conclusions inform the recommendations. So this is true for your project proposal and also true for your project report. Also, when you're proofreading, when you're getting your study partner to look, make sure that you don't introduce any new concepts for the first time in the conclusion section. Now, for the work-based learning, what we ask you to do is to add a section where you're looking at the module learning outcomes and creating your own personal learning outcomes, and then mapping or showing the evidence of how those have been achieved. This is not required for the level 5, level 6 project reports. Okay, well, that's our quick summary for doing our research projects. If you have any questions, please make sure you check with your supervisor. Thank you.